Taking a walk along the historical streets of a European or American city, one often has the impression they all have the same atmosphere. They are characterized by boulevards, avenues, alleys, and places with a regular layout. Pausing for a second amid the busy comings and goings of the city, we realize that most of the buildings in the central area are very similar. Well, there's a reason for that, as these buildings were built during the era of historicism. But what does this term stand for? We can determine from the outside that buildings with a modern structure look at least a couple of hundred years old. Yet, most of them were built in the second half of the 19th century. It is because the era in question established professional expertise primarily on the basis of a deep knowledge of history and the skills to apply historical shapes and forms. Styles with the prefix neo developed that could be used by architects in the construction of buildings of various functions. The diverse group of these styles that return to historical eras is collectively known as eclecticism. Here are a few examples of what eclectic architecture is all about in all its rich detail. This graceful space here is an excellent example of the salon-like, closed public squares of historicist urban architecture, with its mostly uniform facade designs. During this time, the design of the facade was of more significance than ever before. It primarily defined the character of an eclectic building. Facades were often segmented vertically by wall pillars borrowed from classicism, while ledges on every floor taken from Romanticism divided the height. Smaller framed windows were emphasized with a broader ledge below and a triangle tympanum or a semicircular design on top. The pediment often contained relief ornaments. Larger windows had a Romanesque or Gothic arch. Richly ornate capitals were highly favored, thus emphasizing the separation of individual floors. Balconies became the highlights of facades. They were given ornate and rather big supports too. According to academic principles, railings could have been made either of brick or of wrought iron, which was becoming increasingly fashionable at the time. Wrought iron was also used for corridor balustrades, for decorating large gates, and for grips and door handles. As far as the other creative arts of the era are concerned, a great number of sculptures were also commissioned as part of a new building. Buildings of a more serious nature just had to have sculptures. Moreover, painting was also present in the interior decorations of buildings. Having gone through the specifics, now let's take a look at the functions of the buildings erected in this style. Most eclectic buildings were residential houses or blocks of flats. They were typically pricey and contained quite a number of technical innovations, like piped water. They were built to attract the wealthy bourgeoisie to towns. However, the different floors in large blocks of flats reflected the layers of society as well. Poor people could only reside on the upper floors. Buildings that still define the face of a big city were built during this time, among which were hotels to satisfy the needs of tourism, which was gaining popularity in those days, and administrative buildings like city halls and courthouses. Permanent theater buildings and museums for historical and artistic exhibitions were also constructed in great numbers, and urban thermal spas created the right hygienic conditions. Most of the university and college buildings were also erected during this era. As technology was advancing, buildings for postal services and telecommunications appeared. Furthermore, as commerce, industry, and tourism were booming, railway stations were in high demand. Last but not least, the church also played a significant role in commissioning construction works. The era of historicist architecture lasted approximately until the early 1900s. Architecture was somewhat limited by the academic approach related to historical styles. Even so, eclecticism was not a failing style that opposed progress. It still is highly valued today and has a key role in the cityscape.